Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Anyway, I am laying down, relaxing, and I'm going to read another story. And so maybe pull up, get under your covers, and listen. I'm going to put the phone down and try to project my voice into it. This is one that I really liked a lot. I read it ahead of time and then I had to stop because there's a part of that kind of took me off guard and I got like, oh, wow, you know. And so this one is Mary Field. She's a pioneer. She was born in Tennessee in the 1830s. It's another story of an African American woman. And I like to read stories from about different people. I mean, I know I'm not African American. I'm a white American child of some generation of immigrants that came here a little while back. Not all that long ago, though. Anyway, and I think we can learn from each other and find commonalities in things that you might hear that I'm talking about and things that, we're experiencing now. And if one thing, public libraries are free. And or we pay through our taxes or however you want to look at it, but you can go into the library and you can check out books and you can read them. And so I am going to read this and I hope you are enjoying it. And I'm doing it for my friend who has low vision and she gets books on tape, and I want her to hear this story as well. So I'm going to put down the phone and here we go. I'll put it up here. All right. Let me make sure. I'm peeking to make sure it's moving. Okay. This is Mary Fields. She was 6 foot, 200 pounds, cigar smoking, whiskey drinking, gun toting pioneer who settled her arguments with her fists and once in a while with a 6-gun. This is how one chronicler quickly sketched the rambunctious Mary Fields, who made a little history in the Old West and in the process became known as Stagecoach Mary. Little is known about her beginnings, other than that she was born in the early 1830s in Hickman County, Tennessee. Some have claimed that she was an escaped slave who made her way to Toledo, Ohio, following nothing but an impulse. Other sources maintain that she was once the property of Judge Dunn, serving as his daughter Sarah's maid. And after emancipation, she continued to work for Miss Dunn, who eventually became a nun. According to these accounts, Mary Fields ended up in Toledo because she followed Miss Dunn, later Mother Superior Amadeus, to the convent to which she had been assigned. Which is not disputed is that by 1884, when Fields was about 50 years old, she was living in Toledo, working as an all-around handyman at an Ursuline convent. Ursulines are members of a Roman Catholic order founded in Italy in the 16th century for the purpose of educating girls. Another thing we know for sure is that Fields and the Mother Superior, two radically different women, had a bond that lasted forever, a bond that led to an adventurous life in the West for Mary Fields. When in the early 1880s, Mother Amadeus and 4 other nuns were sent on the mission field out west, she invited Fields to join them, but Fields chose to stay put. However, months later, when she heard that Mother Amadeus had gotten pneumonia during her westward journey and was close to death, Fields got moving. As tough as she was, it's not easy to believe that she journeyed the nearly 2,000 miles alone to a place some Native Americans called the Land of the Shining Mountains, and which European Americans eventually named Montana. It was a vast place of dry, hot summers and fierce, far below zero winters of great plains and mountains many miles high, most majestic of all the Rockies. It was a place where the buffalo roamed, as did deer, elk, moose, and other creatures great and small. For many years, this land had been home to Native American peoples, the Blackfeet, the Shoshone, the Arapaho, the Flathead. There were also the Sioux and the Cheyenne, whose warriors triumphed in the legendary Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, where General George Armstrong Custer had his last stand, his final defeat. The U.S. cavalry eventually subdued the Native Americans, herding onto reservations almost all those they did not kill. When Mary Fields arrived in Montana Territory in 1885, its population was mostly a mix of Europeans. They were descendants of the French, English, and Scottish adventurers who in the 1820s and 1830s had trapped animals and traded their furs. These mountain men, as they were called, had also opened up the Rocky Mountain region, making a way for what would become Oregon. Montana was home, too, to Irish, German, and Scandinavian folks who had come to work in the gold mines in the late 1860s, and to other European Americans who trailed up from Texas, hoping to strike it rich as cattle ranchers. As for African Americans, they were there, but not in great numbers. In his book, Black People Who Made the Old West, William Loren Katz figured that when Mary Fields came to Montana, there were around 350 of her own kind in the territory's more than 140,000 square miles of prairie. They were coal miners and cowboys. They were soldiers at Fort Shaw, Fort Anissinabone, I don't know how to pronounce that, Assinibone, and Fort Missoula. They were homesteaders too, and men and women pursuing various trades and businesses like innovative photographer J.P. Ball. Montana was a lot of wilderness, and a lot of wilderness. It was a place made most suitable for Mary Fields' temperament. In the beginning, her corner of this big sky country was St. Peter's Mission, about 15 miles northwest of the soon-to-be town of Dodge City, later renamed Cascade. This is where Mother Amadeus and the other nuns had been sent to start a school for Native American girls along with other missionary work. When Fields arrived at the mission, she was very glad and grateful that, though still ailing, Mother Amadeus was alive. After nursing her back to health, Fields decided to stay and work with the nuns. She cleaned, she did laundry, she gardened and farmed. She also did nearly everything else that called for backbone and true grit. From light construction work on the convent building to driving a wagon to town and back laden with provisions and building supplies. Some say Fields picked up the work crew's bad habits like drinking and cursing, and some say she taught the work crew a thing or two. Despite the efforts of the nuns to cultivate in her a meek and mild soul, Mother Amadeus tried to keep her from becoming rough and vulgar, wrote one resident of Cascade, but Mary could not be managed. Seeing as how Fields did so much men's work, it was only fitting, though shocking to many, that she dressed mostly in men's clothing. Sometimes she wore a dress and apron over her pants, but one suspects that this wasn't an attempt to be more ladylike. Come winter, this get-up topped by a man's overcoat would be a lifesaver. For many were the days and many were the nights that she braved bitter cold and sometimes blizzards in her journeys to and from Cascade. The weather was not the only life-threatener Mary Fields encountered. There were wolves along the way, too, a pack of which, with her rifle at the ready, she once stared down and staved off one long night after they spooked her horses into a frenzy that sent her wagon load tumbling. On another frightfully cold winter's night, when she did not return to the mission, she was given up for dead. The next day, a search party was astounded to find Fields very much alive and working to get her wagon back on track. How had she survived the sub-zero cold? I just kept walking, she told the men. I just walked up and down all night to keep from freezing. Fields did not reserve her ferocity and fortitude for wild animals and wild weather only. She battled men too. On one occasion, she got into a heated argument with the foreman of a nearby ranch. When he hit her with an insulting face and gestures, she hurled a large stone straight at his face. Another time, a verbal battle with one of the mission's hired hands escalated into a duel. Fields was the quicker draw, as the story goes. She fired at the hired man, sending her bullets just close enough to let it be known she could make the shave closer if need be. The hired man took the hint and fled across the meadows. Although this incident ended without bloodshed, it had grave consequences for Fields. For the Mother's superior, Bishop Brondel, quartered about 75 miles away in Montana's capital, Helena. This was the last straw. True, he had received reports of Fields' enormous service to the mission, But he also heard about her drinking, swearing, and fights like this last one. He could tolerate no more of her cantankerous and combative ways and charged Mother Amadeus to send that black woman away. Mary Fields was bad for St. Peter's image. When Fields heard about this, she galloped to Helena to protest her banishment to the bishop's face. Although she did get a hearing, there is no record of what transpired between her and Bishop Brondel. What we do know is this was one fight Fields lost. Mother Amadeus had to obey her orders, but she did not send her faithful servant too far away. During the 10 years that Fields had worked at the mission, her paycheck had come in the form of room and board, tobacco, ammunition, and occasionally a little cash. As far as we know, she never complained. In what could be considered back pay, Mother Amadeus helped Fields open what one of her contemporaries simply called an eating house in Cascade. But this restaurant didn't last too long. Not because Fields couldn't keep the customers coming back, but because this hard-as-nails woman had a soft spot for too many sheep herders and other seasonal workers who needed to eat now but pay later. So while many a customer didn't go hungry, Fields did go broke, twice. Both times Mother Amadeus came to her rescue. Then before Mary Fields could go broke a third time, Mother Amadeus helped her get a job. It was steady work, hard work, with one exception. It had always been men's work. Mary Fields became a U.S. mail carrier. Her route was between Cascade and the Mission. Her first mode of transportation was a spring wagon with a team of 4 horses supplied by Mother Amadeus. Her cargo was people as well as mail, heading to and from the Mission, often with luggage, which Mary Fields had to help carry when the wagon and later her stagecoach broke down. When she started the job in 1895, she was over 60 years old. Yet for the 8 years that she worked this route, neither rain, nor sleet, nor dark a night stayed Mary Fields from her appointed rounds. In Cascade and its environs, fantastic tales abounded about Stagecoach Mary, like this item that appeared in the Cascade Courier during this legend's lifetime. Mary could drive. She could use a 4-horse lash with a dexterity that made a man green with envy, and she also could use a 6-shooter with equal accuracy. There was a time when Mary's friends claimed if a fly lighted on the ear of one of the leaders of her 4, she could use her choice of either shooting it off or picking it off with her whip end, and that if she was of mind to, she could break the fly's hind leg with her whiplash and then shoot its eye out with her revolver. There were also accounts that on days of mountainous snowfalls, when it was impossible to travel the roads by horse, Mary Fields would fasten on her snowshoes, sling the mail sacks over her shoulder, and walk her 15-mile route. In 1903, when she was over 70 years old, Mary Fields stepped down from the stagecoach and settled down in Cascade, where she went back into business as a washerwoman. This enterprise, which she managed out of her 2-room cabin, was more successful than her first, and it involved just as much, if not more, hard work. Doing laundry back then was a back-bending, hand-bruising chore. Clothes were scrubbed on a washboard in a tin tub or cauldron with soap, probably lye, then lugged into another huge vessel for rinsing, then cracked through a wringer to squeeze out the excess water. Or maybe the only wringer she had was her hands. After the washing came the drying, hanging clothes outdoors on a clothesline. And if there was a storm of dust or rain or snow, a lot of work might go down the drain. Finally, there was the ironing, pressing down hard on a 5 or 6 pound cold iron that had been heated to a sizzle on a wood stove fire. Mary Fields certainly had enough customers to keep her busy. By now, Cascade, which was born in 1888 during construction of the Montana Central Railroad, was becoming a hardy town with enough inhabitants to require schools and support a few churches and 2 hotels. Just as old age had not hindered her ability to work, neither did it make Mary Fields simmer down her temper. If someone crossed her, she still did not hold her tongue, nor her hand. One person found this out the hard way was a man who left town without paying his laundry bill of $2. When Fields encountered him 2 years later, she didn't bother asking him for the money, but simply grabbed him by the collar and punched him. To flabbergasted onlookers, she matter-of-factly explained, "His laundry bill is paid." Mary Fields was not merely Cascade's leading laundress, she was a town treasure. When her house and so her business burned down in 1912, scores of townsfolk chipped in money, time, and material to help her rebuild. In addition to working as a laundress, Fields also did other jobs in her twilight years, including something many might think out of character, babysitting. This rough and tumble woman had a great fondness for and a tender way with children. One of her customers was D.W. Monroe, the second mayor of Cascade, whose 4 sons Fields often took care of. As she did with the other children she kept, she treated the Monroe boys to candy and other goodies with the very money she earned from babysitting. Fields' complexity, one moment tough, the next quite sweet, is also revealed in the fact that by all accounts her pride and joy was her flower garden, and she often shared its bounty of her favorite flower, the pansy, and other posies with her neighbors. Cascade's baseball team was the primary recipient of Fields' flowers. She was not merely crazy about baseball, she was the team's mascot. As its good luck charm, she didn't dress up in a clownish outfit, but for every game she did make buttonhole bouquets for each man on the team, plus a handful of large bouquets to go to home run hitters. Some of what we know about Mary Fields comes from one of Montana's favorite sons, Gary Cooper, a one-time cowboy turned 2-time Academy Award-winning actor who starred in a number of Western movies. Cooper's hometown was Helena, but he had family in Cascade. It was during visits with these relatives that he caught glimpses and gathered news of Mary Fields. He remembered her quite vividly in an article that appeared in Ebony magazine in 1959. "I remember seeing her in Cascade when I was just a little shaver of 9 or so. She smoked cigars until the day she died in 1914. She must have been about 81 as near as anyone could figure. She celebrated 2 birthdays a year because she didn't know the exact date of her birth, but they would close Cascade schools in her honor whenever she felt like having one. They say Mary had a fondness for hard liquor that was matched only by her capacity to put it away, and it's a historical fact that one of Cascade's early mayors, D.W. Monroe, gave special permission to let Mary drink in the saloons with men, a privilege, if you want to call it one, given to no other woman. To be sure, Mary Fields was no ordinary woman. Cooper summed her up well when he called her one of the freest souls ever to draw breath, or a 38. And she wanted to die as she had lived, independently. She fell ill, of what we do not know, in the fall of 1914. She tried to continue to work, but she was eventually forced to take to the sickbed. Then came the day when Mary Fields knew she was dying. Instead of calling for folks to gather around her deathbed, she slipped from her cabin, blankets in hand, and made her bed in a field overrun by tall weeds. She wanted no one fussing and fretting over her. She wanted no pity. She wanted to die alone, out under the big sky. The Monroe boys were the ones who found her, close to death. Against her will, Mary Fields was taken to the hospital where she died on December 5, 1914. She was buried in Hillside Cemetery at the foot of the mountains by the winding road that leads to the old mission. A notice headlined "Old Timer Passes Away," which appeared in the Cascade Courier a week after Mary Fields died, tells us that her death more than mattered to the people of Cascade. The funeral services of Mary Fields were held in the Pastime Theater Tuesday afternoon at 3:15. There was a large attendance of friends and acquaintances of the deceased, many of them having known her for over 25 years, who left nothing undone to make the services complete in every respect for one of the oldest landmarks in Cascade. The floral contributors were especially in evidence. In his remembrance of Mary Fields, Gary Cooper noted that she had been remembered by the famous cowboy artist and one-time resident of Cascade, Charles M. Russell, in a pen and ink drawing that eventually ended up in the care of the Montana Historical Society. This sketch, created in 1897, depicts a parcel of action-packed incidents in the town's history. Almost dead center is Mary Fields, not kicking up a ruckus, but with her rump on the ground, along with a bag of groceries and a basket of eggs. She had been sideswiped by a runaway hog. Russell titled this piece, A Quiet Day in Cascade. Mary Fields lived loud. She lived large. She had some bad habits and some very ugly ways, but she also had a good heart. Most of all, she had nerve, spunk, and spirit, which is what it took to survive in the Old West days, especially if you were without any kin or many of your own kind around. So that is the story of Mary Fields. I hope you liked it. I hope I'm talking loud enough. Anyway, have a good day.